Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is unwind. And after this week's earlier discussion about the verb wind, I thought it might be good to look at some other verbs that are a bit connected or related to our initial discussion of the verb wind. So, with that, let's review some of the definitions of the verb unwind. One way to use it is to talk about undoing or to have something be undone after having previously wound or after something had previously been wound, whatever the case may be. Now, if you think back to our original definition of the verb wind, we talked about a few different things. So we talked about kind of encircling something, wrapping something around it. That's one way, but not all winding has to be something we can observe, right? So sometimes it has to do kind of with complex pieces and that idea of like we're almost in our mind doing that complicated wrapping around. Now, a second and really common way to hear the verb unwind used can mean to relax after a period of work or maybe a period of stress or tension. Well, many people commonly say, like, I'm going to unwind by, and then they're going to mention something they find relaxing or that they find to be enjoyable. A third way you might encounter the verb unwind can mean to sell shares or close some type of trading position, especially in situations where there are going to be multiple steps to it. Now, this third definition is not something you're likely going to hear a lot of unless maybe you work in finance, you're someone who invests a lot in the stock market. Maybe then you'll encounter this either as you're reading or speaking with others. But for most people, you don't need to know that third definition. But what you should know is that unwind is an irregular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms unwinding. The past tense and the participle form of our verb require a spelling change. Just like our original verb, wind, we're going to change the I to an OU, and we're going to have a different pronunciation for both our past tense and participle form of the verb. So here we're going to pronounce this unwound. Unwound. Okay. Now, there are no phrasal verbs that we need to study, so we can move on to some verb tense practice. Today, we will discuss the past perfect and the present perfect progressive. Let's start with the past perfect. We use this verb tense to talk about completed actions, but what makes it different than just the simple past tense is that we are going to note that this one action that's in the past perfect either was completed before a certain period in the past or maybe before another action. So past perfect, 2-letter P's there, that can help you remember you'll need 2 parts to make your verb. And this is a verb tense where our structure or pattern will stay the same no matter what our subject is. So in the affirmative or in the positive here, we're going to start with our subject. We're going to use had and then the participle form of our verb. You can see that in the example. Investigators had unwound the complex enterprise's criminal activities before reporters broke the story. Here, this might be saying like it was very difficult to follow which transaction, who was controlling something, or maybe who was receiving something. But sort of the understanding of all of those steps and pieces had been completed before it became, it sounds like maybe front page news. Okay. Now let's move on and look at a sentence in the negative, also in the past perfect. To do this, we're going to start with our subject. We'll use had not, and then the participle form of the verb. You'll also hear people use the contraction form. So, another example, the effects of the 2008 recession had not unwound completely when the community was impacted by tornadoes. So 2008 was a really difficult time for many, many people. A lot of people were laid off. Some people had a lot of their savings disappear. Some people lost their homes due to the types of mortgages they had. Tough time. And this sentence is saying like that all of these kind of bad things had not been undone or not been improved upon when yet another kind of awful thing happens to that maybe city or region, whatever it may be. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the past perfect, we'll start with had, then you're going to have your subject, and then the participle form the verb. Here's another example. Had you unwound the cords before you connected them? So here we might be talking about that physical wrapping around something. So again, someone might be trying to understand sequence of events. Did you just connect the cords, or did you undo that winding process? Now let's move on and make some sentences in the present perfect progressive. Now, if you're a regular watcher of this channel, you know you might be very accustomed to me saying if your teacher or maybe your textbook calls this present perfect continuous, that is just fine. It means exactly the same thing. We use this verb tense to talk about actions that started in the past, are continuing into the present, and may even continue into the future. Generally, we're trying to stress to our listener or to our readers how long this action has been ongoing. So here you'll notice 3 P's are in present perfect progressive, which is why I like to say this. So 3 P's mean you need 3 parts to make your verb. And this is a verb tense where you need to pay attention to that subject. If your subject is I, you, we, they, then any of those 4, then use have. It's part 1. The participle been, B-E-E-N, and then use the ing form of the verb. And there's part 3. Okay? So if your subject, though, happens to be one man, one woman, one thing, so he, she, or it, right, we're going to use has, H-A-S, the participle been, and then that ing form the verb. So let's take a look at an example. She has been unwinding with a book and a cup of tea after work for the last 6 months. So we're describing what someone has been doing maybe to kind of release their stress or tension, and that's how they're choosing to do that. Now let's move on and look at a negative present perfect progressive sentence. To do this, again, start with your subject. You'll use either have not been in the ing form the verb, or has not been in the ing form the verb. So pay attention to that subject. And let's look at another example. Core inflation hasn't been unwinding at a pace that would offer the Fed the confidence to cut interest rates. So this sentence may be a little difficult to understand, but it does come from some recent news reports. We have a government agency that kind of looks at the health of our economy. They set interest rates, and they will adjust that based on what they are trying to accomplish. And that gets into some very technical things, and I'm your verb lady. I'm not your economics professor, so we won't go too deep into it. But here, right, the interest rates were raised for a period. There has been a little bit of lowering, but there are still these kind of concerns about inflation. And you might think of like someone being worried, right? It's like they're being kind of wrapped up, right? Really anxious, okay? And here, what the sentence is saying is that sense of nervousness is not being undone. And so that's why most recently there wasn't an interest rate cut. Now let's move on and look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect progressive. To do this, you want to start with either have or has, whatever form matches your subject, that subject comes next. Use the participle been, and the ing form the verb. Here's our last example. Has the dollar's dominance in Asia been unwinding? So again, go back to that original definition of undoing something or something being undone. And that's really what that sentence is describing. Now we'll take just a quick moment. I don't have many related words here for us. I think it's actually just one. Depending on the type of work you do, it's possible you might encounter the noun unwinder. So this could be some type of device that you might think unspools, unwraps something, or it unwinds it. So an example of this in a sentence might be, the large textile machines use unwinders to separate material before it is cut. So again, this isn't an everyday term I would necessarily memorize or use, but you may still encounter it based on the kind of work and type of interactions you have. Thanks to everybody for watching, and I just hope you have a wonderful day and that you get to unwind a little bit. Take care.